back to week 7 of my 6-month life reset journey. This week was filled with university deadlines, startup interviews, a rough usability testing, and an amazing breakthrough with a school. Intense studying and a meaningful breakfast with my professors. And somehow I still made it to the gym. I jogged to a friend's place on purpose and I hit my language learning goals. So yeah, that wasn't a quiet week like the last two where I was kind of lost in space, but it also wasn't a glamorous one either. It was the kind of week that makes you see balance doesn't mean everything is calm. Balance is sometimes just learning to not fall apart while things shift around you, because that's why this week felt like a transition week. Everything is in motion, nothing just quietly settled. And me, somewhere in the middle, trying to stay steady. So in this video, I want to share the BTS behind the scenes of what that actually looked like. How I'm handling the end of my university semester, what it meant to be in a room with my classmates one last time, what a terrible test day taught me, and why a letter of intent made me so excited, and how jogging to a new friendship reminded me that roots don't always come from hustle. If you ever felt like you're doing everything but not sure where it's all leading to, this one is for you. Let's talk about what it really takes to hold space for multiple versions of your life at once, and how we grow into the next version gently, imperfectly, and still on time. Let's start with university. This week I had my first final exam, one major presentation, and I submitted a 21-page project report. That alone could have been a whole video. It was so much work. But somehow the things that stayed with me most wasn't the grade pressure or something, it was the breakfast. Our professor, who's about to go into paternity leave, invited our tiny class of 5 surviving students of the last semester for a last breakfast together. It wasn't formal, we had no agenda, just like coffee, fresh bread, and a round table where each of us shared what's next in their life. We talked about where our startups are heading, who's pivoting, who's letting go, who's starting over. Everybody of us has a startup. One person's business is actually really thriving, good revenue, good contacts. Another one who also makes revenue decided to pivot still and go a bit into a different direction, still with the same core concept and values, but different products. Another one realized that the startup life might not be for her and she will be pursuing a PhD later on, and she started to work at the university right now. Another one is stepping away from her current team to build something different. She stays in her entrepreneurial era, but what is very funny is that she rented an office in the same town I live in, but more to this later. As I listened to all the stories, I felt so much permission to evolve, to pivot, to pause, because it's so easy to think that finishing something like a master's degree means you should already know what's next. But most of us don't. And being in that room really showed that growth doesn't always mean scaling. Sometimes it means changing courses. We weren't just classmates anymore. We were like peers, we were co-creators, people who built startups together next to each other. Like we stumbled, we tested, we rebuilt, and this breakfast was a closure day. Not to say we're done, but to say we've all changed, and that's allowed, and that's very good. There was one day this week that felt like a comedy sketch version of my life. 2 days after breakfast, somewhere in there I thought, is this balance or is this chaos? But actually it just showed that when your life is full of different priorities, you have to stop trying to make everything equal, instead learn how to make them rhythmic. That day didn't work because everything was like neatly planned. Actually, I didn't plan most of it. It worked because I let the pieces move and I showed up for them one by one. I spontaneously jogged to a friend's house. It was so spontaneous because my friend, she texted me she is in town right now, and usually my friends are at least an hour or 2 away from me because my university is like 70 kilometers into the east and my workplace is 100 kilometers to the west. Also, because this might sound small, okay, but it was emotional for me because my friend who opened the salon, the one from university, she lives 10 minutes away now by car or 45-50 minutes away on foot. And because I don't own a car, I would either need to rent or lend one. And aside from it being very economically unfriendly to drive for just 10 minutes, I still needed to take this opportunity and see her. I had 2.5 hours until my next meeting, and here's what happened. I jogged to my friend's new salon, spent time with her, saw her new space, so beautiful by the way, she really put her heart into it. And then I realized I was almost late for my new job interview we had scheduled for our new IT role at the startup, and literally sprinted the 45 minutes home. I made it just in time. I had the job interview and then I had a tutoring class scheduled. And then my gym buddy asked if I'm up for a late workout, so I also went there. Even though everything was like super hectic, and for the first time in almost 6 years of living there, I have found someone very nearby, a potential friend, a real person I can just casually meet. That hasn't even been easy for me because my gym buddy right now, distance-wise, she's my closest friend with only 40 kilometers. So no, it's not easy because, as I said before, uni is in one direction. My tutoring students are scattered worldwide. My startup calls are mainly remote, and suddenly there's this little moment of rooting and belonging, just a 45-minute walk from my door. So I needed to jog, not just for the fitness, but for the presence, to take in the real nice weather, the streets, and this place I actually live in. It sounds so dramatic, but jogging there and back was a very calming space, saying, I live here and I'm not just passing through anymore. And maybe I'm also not alone here anymore. But not everything this week went smoothly. We also had a usability testing day and was such a flop. Almost none of the testers were from our actual target group. I don't know why they actually signed up. This was such a weird energy. I also had barely slept this week because of all the other things going on. And I overslept, actually. I took an accidental nap, didn't intend to, but as soon as I woke up, I had to rush through the door and I was jogging again. So much because, as I said before, I don't have a car and the train station is about 5 kilometers away from my house. But when I got there, everything was already set up. The laptops were arranged and the drinks were brought and the rooms were ready. My co-founder had handled it all, and that moment hit so good. It was him who came actually late last week, where I prepared everything, but today the roles switched. And actually I felt so much pressure leaving me because I knew I could rely on him just as he relied on me last time. Because when you're building something from scratch, especially a startup, you usually feel like you're holding everything on your own, but not this time. Even though the session itself wasn't what we hoped for, I felt feeling something so much more valuable. Trust. Not just in the product, but in the people. Building with the people who step up when you are exhausted. That's what makes hard weeks sustainable. That's what turns the burnout into a teamwork. So if you're building anything right now, I hope you have people who can carry the weight with you sometimes. A friend that's like hopping in, helping you to open a stall, or your parent or sibling handling invoices with you, or just your significant other who makes your coffee or tea in the evening when you're doing like a late night shift. And if you don't, that's okay too. I know you will find them someday. And when you find them, please protect all those relationships. Invest in them. They make all the difference. Because you need to be a villager to live in a village. Okay, now for the good stuff. The kind of thing you work towards for months. We had a meeting with a school. And yes, they said yes. Not just, this looks interesting, and not just, we'll think about it. They wrote a letter of intent. We have a starting date right after the holidays, after the fall holidays. We're going to be in an actual school with actual students, long-term testing our product. And this is so big for us. It's not a full scale yet, but for us, it's a first step. It's a first door. It feels so surreal because we had such a hard time getting into schools actually, that we were on the verge of losing a bit of hope and saying, maybe leaving schools in general is the better option, but they noticed us. They told us they would be so happy to test our product because we were out there. We were telling people what we're doing and how we're doing it with all our passion, and apparently that resonated. And in that moment, they said yes. It felt like everything was so good, so fast. everything so exciting, because getting into schools in Germany to say yes, that's so not easy. It takes time and trust and relationship. But this school, they did say yes, because we showed up, because we listened, because we adapted our product based on the feedback, real conversations, not just theory, not just what's in our head. And now we are going in with care, with confidence, with real foothold. It's so surreal. Like the idea we dreamed up in classrooms is slowly becoming real, and that version of me who used to question if anything of this would actually matter, having so much self-doubt last week, she is still here, but luckily quieter now. Because this work is working. So guys, that's my call to you. Build in public. You never know who will notice you. When the future feels real, it's also a bit scary. Here's what I'm also noticing lately. Some milestones don't feel like finish lines. They feel like doorways. Getting that letter of intent from the school, it wasn't a celebration moment with balloons and cakes. It was powerful. A feeling of, wow, this is really happening. Now I need to show up. I have to show up. Now we build for real. The thing is, we have been building for real before too, but now the pressure is so different. The energy is so different. When you have your first customer, it's, I think, a memory you will never forget. And that's the thing about progress. We don't talk about enough. It doesn't always come with confidence. Sometimes it comes with the quiet sense of responsibility. Like, you have been trusted, now build something that's worth of that trust. And I think this connects to what I've been feeling all months, because the reference letter from my professor and the friends showing up with encouragement, my team stepping in when I actually dropped the ball, and new roots forming in my actual neighborhood, it all adds up to a subtle but heavy question. Can I live up to that version of me that other people already see? And this week I think my answer is still not yet, but I'm trying, and that counts. So maybe I actually do live up, because the person they see is trying and is achieving and is growing and getting stronger, but always believing and helpful to others. So yeah, this week, not calm, not perfectly planned, not particularly aesthetic, but full of movement, real movement, like my exams and deadlines, a win with the school, conversations that opened new doors, jogging through the city. I'm finally starting to maybe claim, and letting go of the pressure to have it all figured out. It's easy to think balance means peace, but I think it might mean presence. So be where your feet are, to pivot when needed, and to listen when it matters. To not give up on yourself when things go sideways. This was a week of contrast, burnout, stress and teamwork, tiredness and momentum, small steps, big wins. And I am proud of how I navigated it. Not because I nailed every detail, but because I stayed in it. And I stayed with myself through the whole thing. So this week, I would love to hear from you. What's shifting in your life right now? Are you in a transition phase? Academically, personally, creatively? What's one way you're choosing presence over perfection this week? Please drop it in the comments. Let's normalize the messy in-between season, please. And if you're new here, this is a week 7 of my 6-month journey to rebuild my systems, show up more honestly, and document the real process of building my life with purpose, but without the pressure to pretend it's perfect. And if that sounds something like you want to be part of, subscribe and follow along. Every week is a little different, but every week is real. So see you next time. I'll share more on how I'm preparing for fall and what routines I'm building maybe for the summer. Until then, keep moving, keep showing up, even in the weird in-between phases. So see you next week.